I'm curious, Tony, was it hard for you to show affection to Rachel when you first came together in your relationship?
Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Rachel and Tony Hauck. Rachel is an award-winning New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. An original Hallmark movie was filmed for her book, Once Upon a Prince. Rachel is a worship leader and a conference speaker who graduated from Ohio State University with a degree in journalism. She is also a former sorority girl and a devoted Ohio State football fan. Rachel hopes to cross off one of her bucket list dreams by standing on the sidelines with Ohio State football coach Ryan Day. Tony has been the senior pastor at Church on the Rock in Melbourne, Florida for 36 years. He started his ministry there serving as the youth and singles pastor. Tony has a BA in physics from DePaul University. God called him to be a pastor, he says, after coaching football and basketball and teaching high school science. Tony's passion is teaching the Word as well as prayer and worship. Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. We have a Florida-Carolina connection going on today. 35 degrees in Carolina and 72 in Florida with Rachel and Tony Hauck. And we are so grateful to have you all with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Glad to be here.
We are excited. And we love to start off every interview with kind of the same question. And Tony, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind. I want to know, what do you think makes you and Rachel a kick-ass couple?
Honestly, it sounds too simple, but just Jesus. We are so busy trying to pursue him that our relationship gets real easy.
That's beautiful. That's you guys are both pursuing the same thing and find each other in that process. I think there was a couple that Rory Vaden and AJ Vaden. I don't know if you've heard of Rory. Rachel, he's a New York Times author, wrote a book called Take the Stairs. And when we interviewed them, he said, it's like a triangle. He said, I'm pursuing God and she's pursuing God. And we're headed the same direction as long as we're both doing that and things just go well. So I love that response, Tony. Rachel, what would you add to that? What do you think makes you and Tony a kick-ass couple?
We generally like each other. We were best friends before we got married, before even kind of the romance kicked in. And that's a whole other podcast. Yeah, that's a whole story in and of itself. But we genuinely like each other. We get along. We have very familiar or similar backgrounds as far as our family size, our family dynamic, where we fall in the birth order, even our college experience. I went to a big school. We went to a small school, but we were both involved in the Greek system. So we have a lot of similarities and a lot of things in common, and we just like hanging out.
Nice. So I hear you saying that your friendship system is really in place and is really important in your relationship, which I think is so valuable in any relationship, honestly.
And that's the foundation. I think things get messy if you don't start with friendship, if you jump right to the romantic and intimate stuff. And that friendship system, that's kind of a consistent theme we've found with all the couples we've spoken with. And I love that you guys started with friendship because it means you have a general like before the love came in.
Yeah, we were 3 years, best friends, doing ministry together, all that kinds of stuff. So when we got married, there was really not that much adjusting because we already, kind of had a dance we were doing.
We knew each other pretty well.
Yeah. And so it was seamless. And again, those things all flow into each other, our ministry together, our friendship together, our marriage now. Those aren't distinctives. The lines all blur on those. They're all just part of us, being together.
We did have of course, that adjustment period of actually living together.
Of course.
So I had to learn, or he had to learn, because we started with a full-size bed. So he had to learn that when you sleep like this, you're going to elbow your wife. So I would roll over and get the elbow in the eye. So we had to learn a couple of tricks, or I would put something on the table and he'd say, "Who put that there?" And I'd think, the only other person in the house, it's me. So we kind of had it wasn't even just, it was more comedic than anything else.
Sure. So. Yeah. I'm the organized type. So we came up with solutions like, you can have the whole house, the top of my dresser, this top of my desk, and this table. Don't fiddle with this.
Don't
Everything else, do whatever you want.
They belong to me.
I had to carve out some territory. I love it. I love it.
That's great advice for our listeners. Find your territory, stake it, claim it.
Yeah.
No one else touches it.
That's right.
Well, I am always interested in our history and how love was modeled for us when we were growing up. And because I really feel like that plays a big part into what we bring to our relationship. And, we're sort of a product of those who raised us, is what I'm saying. And so, Rachel, I'm curious, what did love look like in your household when you were growing up?
It was good. It was really good. I feel very blessed. My parents were also friends. They got along really well. I have no memory whatsoever of an argument or a fight. I'm sure they maybe had closed doors discussions, but it never spilled out into our family. They also were very committed to their relationship with the Lord and to the things that he had called them to. So that was modeled with us. It was modeled with my grandparents. My one grandmother, her husband had died right when I was little, so I didn't see it with him, but she was a very kind, loving person. So it was modeled in the family, and then those that my parents related to. So those people that were in their friendship circle had strong relationships. So
would you say there was a lot of affection, and it was visible affection that was modeled for you as well?
There was, and that was my mom initially, and then my dad said my mom taught him that. So she was the affectionate one. It spilled over into my dad. So hugging my dad or my uncles, that was no big deal. That I felt free to do that and free to get that love back. I didn't feel inhibited by the men in the family or our male friends, my parents' friends. They were all very kind to me. One of them taught me to drive a stick shift when I was 15. They were like second fathers. And so I was very blessed in that sense.
Absolutely. How about for you, Tony? What was love, or how did love look in your family when you were growing up, and how was it modeled for you?
Probably the more traditional. Now we're, just getting ready to turn 62. So we grew up, our teen years would be in the 70s. So I never, ever doubted that my parents loved me, but it wasn't a lot of hugging, wasn't a lot of expression. But I can't say how I knew, but I think just through the support and everything, you just knew. So we would do stuff as a family. We were close, but it was just sort of an understood thing. So I wouldn't say it was real expressive. Then later on, I didn't get saved until just after college. And so, now both my parents have passed away now. They both lived to be 95. But later on, somewhat from Rachel, because she would start hugging him. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess we're leaving now. I should hug him too. And things like that. So it got to be where it was much more expressive later, as I had, again, more of a grid for intimacy in the Lord and all that. But yeah, it was I can only remember, like one really good argument they had that kind of, we're listening to it upstairs, looking at each other with big eyes going, holy cow, what are they doing? So mostly it was a peaceful, loving home that just wasn't real expressive.
Sounds like you're both very blessed in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Tony, was it hard for you to show affection to Rachel when you first came together in your relationship? Was that something that you had to overcome, or did that come natural for you?
A little bit, not hugely, but yeah, we were probably at different places on the scale, and so I had to, because I just wouldn't think of it, and she'd have to. Tell
Maybe
me
she
things
needed
like,
it.
Yeah, you should hug me more. I'm like, okay. But yeah, it's okay. And for women out there, it's all right. Remind your husband to just do it nice.
We all need those reminders.
Absolutely.
I live on those and appreciate them as well. That kind of leads naturally into, we have 14 pillars, and we always like to focus on 3, and we call those our 3 C's, and they're foundational, we think, really in every successful relationship. And the first C is commitment. And so, Rachel, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to say, tell me why or what commitment looks like in your relationship with Tony.
I think that there's no back doors, there's no side doors, there's no windows. There's no, I'm in it. This is my life. This is my partner. This is truly the one God gave me. Again, that's the other podcast. There's the whole story there. This is, yeah. And I feel like if I was separated from him, I'd be separated from part of myself. So commitment to me is I'm in it. I'm in it with prayer. I'm in it with love. I'm in it with affection. I'm in it with keeping no record of wrong. I'm in it not looking for what's he giving me, but what am I giving him? I'm 100% in. And so because we have this kind of really cool symbiotic relationship, we don't have a lot of stress in our relationship. So there's never been in my mind the idea of divorce, that's just not a word that we would, going into it, that was a word that we committed to never say. And also I came into the relationship committed to, I would never talk about him with my girlfriends. I would never badmouth him to anybody. It didn't mean that if I didn't have something I would need to discuss with somebody, I could do that, but I was never going to, frankly, bitch about him. I was never going to do that. If I had an issue, I was going to take it to him. So I just felt like going in, my commitment included honoring. And that was my commitment to me. I didn't feel like I could do anything less. So.
Sure. And did you feel that way, Rachel, from the get-go? Or tell me how you arrived at, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to demonstrate that in this relationship?
I kind of came at it from the get-go, but we were 31 when we got married. So there was a little bit of world experience under my belt. And I actually, when I worked in the corporate world and I worked in newspapers and I expressly worked in classified advertising departments, training and installing computer systems, I listened to the women in the room. It was largely the sales staff was women. And the things that they would say about their husbands was shocking. And I just took a lesson from that. And then I would hear it from other people. And I thought, why would I say that it's about someone that I've committed my life to, that I share a life with, I share a bed with, that I share probably children with? It was shocking to me to kind of see it. And I committed to that even before we were engaged. I just knew that's who I wanted to be as a wife, and thought a lot about what kind of wife I wanted to be before we even got to that point. So,
right. Well, I think the theme, you said it, but I want to kind of come back to it, is you said honor and honoring. Yeah. Everything you talked about, honoring him.
Yeah.
And that was kind of that common thread. And that's a beautiful way to look at commitment, is how am I being honored, but how am I honoring my spouse? Yeah. And I love that.
We're talking about faith and moral code right now this month, or actually we're already in December, last month.
I know, right?
At KCN, and a moral code, a moral compass. That's really what I hear you saying is what you're really going by. And I think it's important for our listeners to know that you are honoring your husband when you don't go behind his back and talk about him, or even talk about something that he may have shared with you privately that's no one else's business. So
Right.
I think those are important things to remember when we get caught up and frustrated with our spouse, that we can't just take all that information out there and throw it out there.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
that. Tony, how would you add to that? How do you see commitment in your relationship with Rachel?
It's really the same thing. But again, we got married at 31. So I'd been a Christian for 8 years. I'd read the Bible. I didn't see an option. It was, it was, I just don't see it as an option to go into it any other way. It's not, there's, I forget who said it, I think it was Chris Walton, where God has not expressed an opinion, you're free to believe whatever you want. Where he has expressed an opinion, you aren't allowed to believe something else. So I'd read his opinions on marriage, and I just went, well, this is what you do. It's my responsibility. It's not. So I guess the way that plays out is I don't have an option for it to not work. It's my responsibility to make it work. Sure. And it's really at the risk of, giving you a short teaching. It's really
warning.
What I see in the Bible. You go back to Adam and Eve in the garden, and she, is tempted and she goes for it, but Adam just watches and goes for it, and we're told that. And so I love how the quote unquote curse, a lot of times what God calls a curse is training. And so he says to Adam, you're going to work by the sweat of your brow. Really what he's saying is you're going to have to start taking responsibility now. It's not going to be easy anymore. The earth has fallen. It's not going to cooperate with you. And your family isn't going to eat unless you take responsibility. You have to take responsibility for your wife. You have to take responsibility for the spiritual atmosphere. You didn't do that. You stood there and watched her eat the fruit. And so you're going to learn to be responsible. And then he turns to Eve and says, your husband's going to rule over you, but your desire is going to be for his position. In other words, you're going to learn to come under spiritual leadership. Now, this isn't a man-woman, every man-woman thing. This is a husband and wife thing. You can, Kim, you can be president and have authority over every man in America, except for Matt at your house. It's just a husband-wife thing. So you fast forward to the New Testament, and it's real simple. It says, love your wife, serve her, wash her with the word, be responsible for the spiritual atmosphere in your home, and wives, honor and respect your husband. So you fast forward to modern day, our sin nature, whatever God tells me I don't want to do. So you got a man, you're going to work and be responsible for your family. He goes, not if I can help it. And a woman, you're going to come under your husband's authority to lead the house spiritually. And she goes, not if I can help it. And so you have a guy sitting on the couch watching football with his wife yelling at him to get off his butt and cut the grass. It's just the problem. And so I go, the solution is really simple. And what I find when I talk to people in like marriage counseling, most of the time the wife is telling me how the husband's not doing his job, and the husband's telling me how the wife isn't doing her job. She's not respecting me. He's not loving me. I go, guys, you got to take responsibility to do your own job. And it's amazing how often that simple thing solves the problem. Just love him, whether she respects you or not. Just treat him with honor, whether he is doing it or not. And it starts to turn around. And so I just see that in the Bible. I have no choice but to be responsible for the spiritual atmosphere in my home, for washing my wife with the word, for loving and serving her. Authority in the Bible is always given to serve. So I don't see where I have an option.
Sure. Well,
thank you for that reminder and that short teaching.
Yeah, we got a little bonus in this. This is great.
Bonus.
Well, and it's clear and evident and proof that it works, because you've taken that inspired word and used it as your guide for making those decisions, and you've been blessed because of it and through it. And you both have a wonderful sense of honor in that commitment. I think that's wonderful.
I'd love to talk about the second of our 3 C's, which is communication. And as we both know, good communication is vital in a relationship. It means everything. And I'd love to hear a little bit from you, Tony. What does communication look like in your relationship? How do you make time to communicate with one another?
Well, again, the best friends thing and not having kids, we communicate all the time.
Makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. We'll just talk to each other, but it also has to be learned. I mean, there's intentionality in it as well. And men and women communicate differently. And even if you think you don't know until you're told. So I can remember funny things where I'm learning how to communicate. She would, for example, I'm a guy and I'm kind of analytical. So, we fix stuff. And I can remember it annoying her when she would tell me things that were going on, and I would give her advice and try and fix her problem, but not all the time. Sometimes she wanted me to fix her problem. And I remember one time, and we've been married a couple of years, and she's telling me something, and I'd be sitting there looking at her, and she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to figure out if I'm supposed to help you fix this, or if this is just a time I'm supposed to listen." and she just started laughing. And I don't think we ever had conflict on that again.
What was so weird about that is by now we've been in a relationship for 6 years or so. And I'm telling him something and he's just looking at me and I was like, "Why are you saying anything?" And he goes, "I'm trying to figure out if I'm listening or fixing." And I went, "What?" That had never happened in 6 years. I'm like, what is this new zone that we're in? All of a sudden, it was really funny. We just started laughing because I thought, okay, well, this is a new one that we've got to figure out.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great question, though, right?
Yeah.
Am I fixing or am I listening? It's a valid question because a lot of times we just want to put it out there. We just got to talk about it and say it. We don't need anybody to fix it.
And the guys, by default, unfortunately, are cursed with, "Hey, I got to come in and save it, fix it, make it go the way I think it should."
Exactly. So I had to learn to communicate and when not to communicate,
Same.
Great. How about for you, Rachel? What would you add to that?
Well, there's communication that's just information. And sometimes that's really easy for people. But then there's communication that's heart, that's intimacy, that's revelation. And so are we communicating just information? That's good because that needs to be done. What time are you doing this? Where are you going after that? What time will you be home? But then there's the communication that you need to know my heart. I need to know your heart. And so I feel like those are the times. And even though have that great relationship, and it is something that we have to sometimes intentionally do, is share revelation. And, I'm more of the just get it off my chest, the venter type. He's more of just kind of not holding it in, but thinking, okay, this is my understanding and this is how I'm going to function out of that understanding. So for example, we were talking about finances one time and I was like, "I don't understand why you're not doing something about this particular issue." And this house was a gift to us from some friends, almost a gift. They sold it to us for about $50,000 under the market. They held the loan interest free. We were able to pay it off in 9 years. And so it was this kind of just divine season in our life. And he communicated to me like, "Oh, ever since what happened with this house, how we got this house, I just really saw that God is completely in charge of our finances. We were able to forgive a large debt that someone owed us because of the way that we got this house and the equity that we had in our other house." Long story. That's another podcast. And he said, I just stopped worrying about finances. And I'm like, oh, that was revelation. So that I needed to know, I didn't know where his heart was in that place. And so that was revelation to me. And there's been other things like that where we've shared things with each other and the other one said, "Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, now that makes sense. Now we're on the same page." So I think you have to be intentional about revelation. And that you can't do that as you're walking out the door to go to church or go to work. You have to sit across from each other and have time to say that, like, "I need to talk with you. You need to set the stage. So I feel like that's an important part of really communication in a marriage.
And do you make time for that?
We do. It doesn't happen that often as far as needing those things. I think we're better at realizing those things. But yeah, I'll come in and go, hey, I need to tell you something. And then I wait till he's done doing what he's doing. Or I'll tell me, when is that good time for you to do that? So that's the other thing. Sometimes like, I need to tell you right now.
Timing's huge.
Yeah. So wait until they're in that space, so.
Sure. I appreciate that. Well, that kind of leads into our third C, which is conflict resolution. And no matter how much we love each other and smile and do the right things, there always seems to be some differences of opinion or friction that can arise when either there's bad communication or misunderstanding, right? And so, Tony, when you guys face conflict, what does that look like? How do you see you working in your relationship to face those things or minimize them when they do arise?
Well, I think it's like you said, it's misunderstanding. And we say that as a euphemism. Well, we had a misunderstanding, but no, you really did. They were saying something and you were hearing something different. So this sounds super simple, but it's huge. I'm a big believer in asking questions with any conflict resolution. Even as simple as, here's what I think I said. What did you hear me say? And then I find out, oh, she heard something entirely different than what I intended to communicate, or vice versa. Or I think you're saying this. Is that correct? Just asking questions more than making statements is huge at getting to the bottom of the misunderstanding.
Sure. When it comes to creating a kick-ass marriage, do you ever wonder what you could be doing better? Have you ever thought how helpful it would be to be a part of a like-minded community of other imperfect couples who want to level up in their number one relationship? Come visit Kickass Couples Nation, where you can talk with people just like you who are looking for ways to invest in and increase their joy, commitment, and fulfillment in their most important human relationship. You'll have access to a team of licensed marriage therapists, coaches, articles, podcasts, live webinars, and more. Just visit MatthewPHoffman.com so you can learn more about a community that's ready to help you level up. That's MatthewPHoffman.com so you can become of the growing Kick-Ass Couples Nation right now.
We always talk about seeking understanding. It's really an opportunity to seek understanding when you are having a miscommunication or a conflict over something, an issue.
How about you, Rachel? How do you see conflict resolution or problem when there's problems in the relationship or problems that you're facing? How do the two of you do that dance together?
I'm the peacemaker. So I like peace. I like things to be resolved. I don't like things hanging out there. So I don't necessarily say I love confrontation, but I'll seek more ways to fix things. And I have zero problem taking the low road. So not that I'm a pushover. I'm not a pushover. Yeah. I'm not that I'm a pushover, but I have no problem saying I'm sorry. I have no problem backing down. I have no problem just taking the low road. And to me, it's about esteeming others higher than ourselves. And so if there is some kind of conflict, I'm totally open to me not being right, me being irrational, or maybe something's just going on with me and then I'm putting it off on him or something. So I'm always quick to listen. I try to quick to listen. We've had to learn to do that. Are we listening or are we talking? So for me, that's it, to try to get to the bottom of it. So it's cleaned up, apologize, whatever needs to be said. And we've had some pretty funny things like, are you sure that you told me that? I think you just told it in your head. So we've had some pretty funny conversations like that.
You thought it. You didn't say that.
You had that conversation with yourself, actually.
Yeah, was I there? So it's funny, though, if he's in his chair, he has this chair in our Florida room. If he's there reading or doing something, there's a good chance I'm talking and he's not hearing me. And this is the same. If I'm upstairs working and writing, there's a good chance he's talking and I'm not hearing him. So we have to go, are you listening? And so just a minute. So we'll kind of do that. So we know those tiny little mind holes where if we got to make sure the other person's listening when we're communicating, especially with something important. If it's, hey, what time's the game? That doesn't matter.
Right.
Sure.
And obviously humility is a big deal on both ends.
Yes.
Again, going back to that responsibility and, we both, because we're following Jesus, see that we have to be good at conflict resolution. We have to be humble. We have to be willing to own our stuff and say we're sorry. And so if we're doing that everywhere, it's actually easier to do it with someone you know really well and you love.
Yeah.
Sure.
Give me an example of a good apology, because I think that's important when we apologize. What does a good apology look like?
That's a good question.
Well, I'd say you own your stuff, you don't qualify, and you don't use the apology as a segue. So it's not so much a good apology is really simple. Hey, I get it. I did this wrong. I'm sorry. A bad apology, I guess, is, hey, I did this wrong, but you, or hey, I did this wrong, but here's why. And if, a good apology is just, it's only an apology. It's just, I did this and I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Owning your stuff.
Owning yourself. And I think a good apology may even require some God revelation. This doesn't relate to us in particular, but I had a conflict with one of my brothers once, and I couldn't figure out what was going on because it was kind of happening long distance, social media, a couple of texts. And I remember just going, God, you've got to show me what is happening here. I don't understand what's happening. And I just had this thought, and I was like, oh, right. And so I went and I posted something, or I texted him my understanding, my revelation. I was sorry. And within a few days, he's calling me and telling me about something as if it never happened, which was par for our relationship anyway. And so I feel like sometimes that needs to be a part of our humility process, is going to God and saying, what am I missing here? Mm-hmm. And that revelation allows us to go back and say, I see your heart. So I'm always asking, Holy Spirit, show me how you feel about Tony. So show me how you feel about me, because that helps me. But do I need revelation to understand what's happening in this conflict and how I can apologize and improve myself, or come into alignment with God and with him in the process of resolving this conflict. So, yeah.
And all couples who follow Jesus will say we involve him in our relationship. But what you'll find is, when they're in conflict, they're like, well, Jesus, this is between us.
Right. Jesus, you stay over here.
Yeah.
We don't want you
Get on the sidelines.
We're embarrassed.
I'm like, no. Involve him then as well.
Exactly.
So
that's good advice.
I'm just going, God, what's
Leave
going on?
God out of this. Get out of here.
Why am I feeling this way? And there have been times where we're feeling a little edgy, and we'll talk. And we'll realize, man, this is just kind of something in the atmosphere. And we just pray and deal with it and go, this isn't even us.
Right.
So.
I will share a real quick testimony, if I could. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something started happening where I felt like he didn't like me. I was annoying him, which had never, ever happened. And he would say, like, just a minute, babe. And I would hear, just a minute, babe. And I would, and so I remember being up at my office and I was working, but this thing was churning in me. It was bugging me. And I started praying against it. And I just started, for lack of a better word, rebuking it. And it went away. So a few nights later, I was leading worship and I had on a body pack for my earbuds, and it fell off. And so I just plugged straight into the P16 and I was continued worshiping. And he came up and picked the body pack up and set it on the stand. And he kind of just whispered, this fell off. Well, I heard this fell off. And it was just like an attitude or a tone. And I'm not kidding you guys, from that point on, I'm still leading worship. In my head, we're divorced. People are falling away from God, disappointed. The couple that they saw go after God for 30 years it was a disaster in my head. And I kept thinking, what is this? What is this? And just every bad thing that you can think of. And I beelined right to him afterwards. So here I am in the presence of God, leading worship, and I'm literally in spiritual warfare.
I'm unaware of our pending divorce.
He's unaware of our pending divorce. And I started, I said, look, we got to pray. And so we prayed then, but then we drove home separately, and he was praying, I was praying, and we came in and we got in the kitchen right away. We just said, okay, we're coming against this. We don't know what. We just stood together against it. But I had to let him know what was happening. I had to recognize that, wait a minute, this is not right. This is not me at this point. This isn't my flesh just going through something. This is something beyond me. And if I just feel like, once you surrender to things like that and those thought processes, you can set yourself up for something. And so it was gone after that, after we kind of confronted it together. So,
Sure.
So I do think there's a place for revelation in the midst of our conflict, in the midst of our emotions towards one another. Is it just your flesh or something else going on? The devil roams around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So,
right. Well, I appreciate it. I love the idea of seeking out the answers. It's not always like the two of us are going to figure it out, appealing to the other power, kind of getting out of yourself and looking, faithfully for those answers. And I appreciate that. And I also loved what you all said, each of you, about the personal responsibility. Like, it's not up to me. It's not up to someone to do this for me. It's not up to somebody to do it to me. It's for me to say, I'm taking accountability, and I'm going to do what I need to. It's on me. I'm called to do what I got to do, not to wait for it to be done or given or someone to do it for me. And so I think in relationships and in any relationship, it's that personal accountability. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to live up to the highest standard of what I'm called to do, period. Yeah. Because if both people in the relationship did that, then it's much more smooth sailing. There'll still be some rough water and some winds, no doubt, like you said, because stuff outside of you is trying to come against that goodness. But I love that idea of personal accountability and making sure you're doing everything you need to be doing.
Well, and I think it's so easy to feed that version in your head. Right. You just keep feeding it, and all of a sudden it just keeps becoming larger than life. And I love that you did take the responsibility and said, we got to talk about this. We have to discuss this now. It can't go any further.
Because when you're in that situation, then all of the little tiny things throughout your whole married life, or even your life as a kid before, all of a sudden those things start running through your mind and building a case. Don't let the negative things build a case in your head.
Right.
And so because then that becomes your reality. And it's not long before people, well, how'd you get there? How did they get there? I don't know. They've had such a great marriage. How'd they get there? Well, I don't know. But it really is a battle of the mind. So,
yeah.
Well, we have 11 other pillars that we believe really are important in a successful relationship. And so I'd love to ask you, Tony, of the other 11 pillars, and I believe you have that list in front of you.
Yeah. You do.
Which one resonates most with you, and why does it resonate with you?
Oh, I know. I like.
We like them all.
Most all of them, yeah, and value all of those.
If you had to pick one,
I would probably go with fun and humor.
That's right. We were looking at the page and we both pointed to it at the same time.
Maybe an underestimated value but I just think in life, I think most people take themselves too seriously. And I'm a pastor, so most pastors take themselves too seriously. And it's why not have fun? Why not enjoy? I think that's a valid goal for being married,
laugh together, play together, have fun together.
What are some of the ways
for vacation? Let's go have fun.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you guys do that? What do you guys like to do for fun? How do you keep that alive in that relationship?
We joke all the time.
He's incredibly funny. He was super funny.
Maybe later.
Not on the spot, maybe, but he comes up with some good ones.
But we like a lot of the same things. We watch college football, and
you need number 15 on here. Watch college football together.
Although being Ohio State fans,
this is a disappointing week.
Oh yeah. Well, we won't go there. Okay.
Don't even. Let's keep our joy up.
Yeah, but we do a lot of our life is ministry together. And a lot of our life is separate, but we talk about it. Like she writes books. I don't, I haven't even read all of them. But she'll come down and tell me about it, and I'll bounce ideas off of her and try and get her to throw a spaceship in. She won't do it. And, but we, we're just, I don't know. We're just, everything we're doing, we're talking about it and having fun with it.
Sure.
We have a really cool tradition where we go to breakfast at a local diner, and we know the wait staff, we know a third of the patrons. They're there when we're there, and we read. It's like we go to the gym and we go to breakfast and we read, and that we love that. It's super fun. It's something that we just have in common. Our vacations are go somewhere by a lake and read. Mm-hmm. So those are the fun things for us. I get restless before he does, but I'm cool with walking the mountains by myself or going down to the lake by myself. We're both kind of this unique. He's an introvert. I'm probably that ambivert. I'm middle of introvert and extrovert. So we like to.
So I make a game out of it. I see, my goal is to see how many days we can not leave the property. And at some point she'll tell me we're going to go do something.
Yes, okay, it's time to get out.
I have had enough.
No. How about you, Rachel? Tell me what pillar resonates most with you and why?
Well, fun and humor was one, but 4, trust and honesty. I really value trust and honesty with everybody. And a loyalty is super huge with me, and it is with him as well. But I got to know that I can trust you, because you don't have security and unity, and if none of that's there. Mm-hmm. And I got to know that you're being honest with me. I don't want to think that there's stuff going on that I don't know about. And I'm not talking about in a relationship. He comes home and said, "Oh boy, I had something happen with a church member today, but I can't tell you." That's fine. I don't need to know all of that. But what's going on with you and what's going on with us and in our world, that I need to know. I can trust, and that I need to know you're honest about. So
sure. Well, appreciate you guys sharing those favorites and why. We think they're all important, and it's neat to see how the threads that are the fabric that's created by them coming together. Kim and I believe pretty firmly that our relationship is got so much good in it, it just spills over into a lot of other areas of our lives. So I'd love to hear you guys each share with me. Maybe Rachel, you could start. How is the goodness of your relationship between the two of you spilled over into other areas of your life?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, probably my relationship with other people, talking with friends about their marriage, having a secure place to go from helps me to encourage other women, especially younger women in marriage. One of the big ways that our relationship has spilled over, because we don't have children, we have what I call OPK, other people's kids. And because we did youth ministry, Tony was youth pastor for 25 years. I was probably with him for 20 of the years. We have kids who come home to visit their families, and they stay with us. They spend Christmas Day with us. And we have a family in church. Their daughter the wife came up through youth church with us. I met her when she was 14 in the back of a truck in Guatemala. They have 9 children, and we're Oma and Opa to them. So kind of our relationship, to me, I think of it as kind of an umbrella for anybody who wants a place to come and be. Anybody who doesn't have a place where they feel like they can anchor in, you come in and anchor in with us. So I say family is whoever fits into your heart. So that's kind of, I think, how our relationship has spilled out into the community. And we kind of have this reputation of, oh, that's Tony and Rachel around, not only in church, but in other churches, because so many of now young adults, young married couples raising families, we've somehow connected with over the years through youth church, because we used to have this multi-church youth meeting and youth events. And so we knew quite a lot of youth from various different churches, and they'll see us and be like, "Oh, it's Tony and Rachel." And so we provided for them that example when they were young growing up. Maybe they didn't have it at home, maybe they did, but we provide kind of home base to a lot of kids that came up through youth church. So
how about for you, Tony? How do you see the goodness of your relationship spill over into other areas of your life?
Well, the thing that's probably most often expressed is, and at first we didn't know why, but I think I have a better idea now. But people would express a sense of security, that they feel secure around us, or they feel that way at church, in the environment we've created, or and so I think that us being stable creates a point of stability for other people to come under, and they like that. And I for a while, I taught high school before God made me be a pastor, and because I joked that he tricked me into it. I really didn't know what I was getting into. He didn't. There wasn't full disclosure, we'll just say. But at any rate, I taught high school for a couple of years and coached and stuff. And then when things were getting a little lean back when I was doing youth ministry, I went back and taught for a few years part-time. And this time it was at a Christian school. And I'd never forgotten, there was a girl that just liked talking, and she liked Rachel and I. And Rachel would come in and talk to the class, the English class sometimes, because she writes books, And the girl looked at me at one point and said, "Hey, you and Rachel, do you guys like ever yell at each other?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "We disagree sometimes, but we really don't." And she gets this kind of wistful look on her face, and she goes, "I don't know what that's like." And I'm realizing, oh wow, these kids are growing up in volatile homes, and in one parent homes, and in with conflict and all that. And I began to understand just how big a deal it was for them to have a couple that's just stable.
Yeah.
That,
A safe space, like you said.
for them.
Yeah, safe space. Or believe that you can actually be in a marriage that's healthy and loving and kind, and doesn't have to be volatile or yelling or screaming or fighting.
Well, you were modeling behavior for them that they hadn't seen.
Right.
Yeah.
So they questioned it.
Yeah.
Which I love hearing that. That's great.
They noticed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They noticed it.
Because, they'd hung out with us. And so she was nervous. Yeah.
Sure. Well, if you had to go back, Tony, to your unmarried self and give your unmarried self a piece of advice, one piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow. Just one.
Just one.
Just pick one.
Boy, that is hard. I don't know that it would have done any good. I often encourage young women by telling them, be patient, men mature between 40 and 45.
So true.
Yeah. So I don't know that it would have done any good. I can remember, I think if I went back, I just smile and say, just stay at it, man. Just stick with Jesus. It's going to work out. And knowingly go, you're a knucklehead, but it's going to be okay. I can remember people when I was a young Christian trying to speak in my life and tell me things, and I'm going, yeah, okay. And I think I'm hearing them. And it would be 3 or 4 months later, something would happen in my life, and I'd go, oh, that's what they were talking about. I had no idea what they meant until the life experience caught up. So I don't think unmarried me could handle what I had to tell them.
How about you, Rachel? If you had to give yourself, your unmarried self, some advice, what would that advice be?
I would just say, chill out, girl. And that's really what I came to in my mid-20s. I said, God, I don't know who to marry. I don't know where to work. I don't know what to do with this degree that I have. You put me somewhere. You pick the guy. And literally that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in a Christian home. So, and I was saved, got saved when I was a little girl. So I really didn't know a life outside of God. But I think I would tell me, and this is what I tell youth today. If you stick with God, you don't have to worry, just trust him. But I know the wanderings of being a teenager and a young 20 something. I know the lure of what your friends are doing or what you see now online. I understand the lure of that. When I went to Ohio State, I was like, I'm here to have fun. That's what I want. College fun. That's what I'm here for. And and a degree that would be good too. And so I think sometimes we have to go through those things to learn and to become the people that we are today.
Sure.
But I think I would, like Tony, I don't know that I would have listened, because I'm sure I had people tell me that, but I think I would say, just chill out, hang with Jesus.
Well, you guys have been terrific in sharing with us today. If people want to learn more about you, Rachel, or about you, Tony, where can they find you guys, and where can they learn more about the good things that you're doing?
Well, Rachel, you can just look up Rachel Hauck on Amazon. There'll be a bunch of books. But you can go to rachelhauck.com, right?
Yes.
And she's what, up to 30 or so books out.
Yes.
So she writes really good books. They're good. They're fun.
He even likes them, even without
like
spaceships.
some of them, yeah, and they aren't my genre. And for me, our church is Church on the Rock here in Melbourne. Our website is rockmelbourne.com, and you can go on there, and there's teachings and stuff we're doing. But we're a 150 or so smallish church. We're real big into the Word and worship, and there's teachings on there you might like, but mostly it's the same stuff if you're in a good church your pastor's telling you.
Thank you both so much for
Thank you.
being with us today and for being gracious with your time. We feel like our audience really got a lot of fruit from this interview, so we're grateful.
We're grateful. Thank you so much. We look forward to connecting with you all again and sharing this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure to be here. God bless.
Take care.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.